Coming up next on Insights on PBS Hawaii, do high-tech and film tax breaks really benefit Hawaii? Aloha and welcome to Insights. I'm Malia Mattoch, a host for Insights on PBS Hawaii. For years, Hawaii has been looking for a way to shift from an economy driven by tourism to one based also on modern technologies. The skilled jobs involved with the tech industry could keep our best and brightest young minds in the islands while giving a much needed boost to our economy. One controversial effort was Act 221, which offered high-tech companies in Hawaii tax credits but was criticized for not offering any real way to measure whether they paid off. 2014 signals the end of those high-tech tax breaks, but the state still has 4 years to see whether tax incentives for film, television, and digital media will draw more projects and more dollars to the islands. Do high-tech and film tax breaks really benefit Hawaii? We invite you to join our conversation by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments. Now to our panel. Sumner Lekoi is an economist with UHERO, the economic research organization at the University of Hawaii. UHERO makes economic forecasts to help policymakers, businesses, and other members of the community understand the potential consequences of their financial decisions. Donnie Dawson is the state film commissioner responsible for promoting Hawaii as a filming destination and developing Hawaii's film, television, and digital media industries. She returned to the position 2 years ago after leading the agency from 2001 to 2009. During that time, Donnie was instrumental in getting Hawaii's first film tax credit passed. Melly James is the program manager for the Blue Startups Technology Accelerator, which was founded by video game designer Hank Rogers. Last month, Melly was named president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, a group that fosters entrepreneurial development. Ricardo Galindez is co-founder of Island Film Group, which has produced movies that include Princess Ka'iolani and Soul Surfer. Prior to forming the film group, he was a partner at Goodsell, Anderson, Quinn, and Stifel, where he represented studio clients from independent filmmakers to 20th Century Fox and Warner Brothers. Welcome all. Thank you for joining us this evening. Sumner, may I start with you? Bottom line, do tax credits bring money and jobs to Hawaii?
It all depends. There's good tax credits and there's some not so hot tax credits. We generally want to offer tax credits when what we have is a situation where there's spillovers to the rest of the community, where the rest of the community gets positive benefits if this particular industry expands. It's easy to see that with some types of tax credits that we have. Take, for example, child car seats. Okay, child car seats, if we have more people with child car seats, that means that fewer kids get injured. Fewer kids get injured, our medical bills go down. There's a lot to be said for those types of credits. There's a great credit out there, the R&D tax credit, which gives subsidies to firms who do R&D, research and development. And research and development spills over to other firms in the industry and also spills over to other firms in other industries. It's a great tax credit, mostly because if without the tax credit, firms wouldn't take into account the spillovers to the other people. Firms just tend to take into account the benefits that they get. And so those types of tax credits are great. Tax credits that benefit specific industries, some of them can be okay. Others have, I think, proven reckless and disastrous if we look at the history of them over the last decade.
That being, you're speaking of Act 221?
I think Act 221 was a really reckless endeavor by the state. It provided 80% tax credits, essentially, to a variety of firms in selected industries. 80% is way too much for the state to be paying. Somebody who makes a $1 million investment would find $800,000 of that refunded by the state. They only have $200,000 in the game. Even if that firm loses money, even off that $1 million investment, only $400,000 is made back. That person, off the $200,000 net investment that they make, they've made $200,000 in profit, even though the investment itself has been unprofitable. That was a big problem with Act 221. The big problem was just the credits were way too high. It's easy to see why the state legislature passed Act 221 and why it was signed into law is because at the time, in the late 1990s, we were really quite desperate. The economy was in really bad shape. We'd had a really tough time in the 1990s. And I think this was an effort to try to get things going. Over the next 10 years, we learned that it was a really bad effort. That's the type of thing that we need to avoid today.
So with Act 221 is going to stop issuing the credits this year, this being the end. Melly, how do we then move forward and sort of build a thriving tech industry in Hawaii? Is it possible?
It is possible. I think, regardless of the positive and negative viewpoints of Act 221, what it did do was spur, investment dollars to high-tech startups. So, and I'm not going to speak particularly to any quality of each startup, but, it definitely increased investment activity in the arena. With that being said, the High Growth Initiative, which is a $20 million initiative, which is basically trying to grow the innovation economy here in Hawaii, has been incredibly successful so far. So, their kind of point is to increase entrepreneurial development, research, commercialization, as well as mobilize, the startup investment capital.
For those not aware of the High Growth Initiative, can you explain when did it start? How does it work?
Yes, so essentially it's a combination of state and federal funding, and what they do is match. So for example, Blue Startups is a company that I work for, and our fund is 50% private investment and then 50% state funding. And so what we're doing is essentially, you look back in the day, there were entrepreneurs who were very early stage, and with Act 221, maybe they were getting investment where they weren't quite ready, and there was no real follow-on investment. What we're trying to do is essentially create this line where there's an entrepreneur with an idea, and now we have money with the High Growth Initiative for these accelerators, which is a mentor-driven educational program for entrepreneurs to grow their business, get some investment. The next stage is seed funding. So the High Growth Initiative has also put money in to seed funding local funds, and then also Series A local funds. So it's essentially kind of continuing that line to keep more startups here, continue to grow the entrepreneurial ecosystem so that they don't have to leave as soon as they create an idea. So we're trying to build that. And obviously it's going to take not 1 or 2 years. This is a long-term investment. We look at some other states that have done it successfully, like Texas or Ohio, kind of like a fund of funds. So the state isn't investing directly into particular startups. They're investing in funds such as Blue Startups, such as MBloom, and looking to diversify and grow the ecosystem here.
Is it enough, or do you think the state has to do more?
I think the state, well, I'd love to say the state has to do more. I think as we were growing these funds, we also are trying to grow the community here as well. So much of the innovation happens where there is a thriving community, and the state and the city, and we could always be doing more to help grow that as well. I lived in Silicon Valley for 11 years before moving back home, and taking a look at what were the key things that make it work over there is obviously access to capital and this amazing community of people and events happening and just ideas growing, that if we can do more of that here, and of course attracting more talent to the islands. So a lot of that is recruitment, retainment, and development of the tech talent and just talent in general, bringing people back, keeping them here, so that there are great ideas to invest in.
Donnie, let's jump over to film. We've had some great high-profile productions of late in Hawaii. It's been a really banner couple of years. How much have film credits had to do with that?
I think they've had everything to do with that. And if you look at the history of this production tax credit known as Act 88 now /89, it is a refundable production tax credit that has generated more than $2 billion in direct spending since it was established in 2006.
And 88-89 took the place of the film component of 221, is that correct?
It did. I mean, there was some crossover, but I would like to say that 221 was not all that bad. It did some very, very good things for Hawaii, and not the least of which was attracting talent here on the creative side. But it was not tailor-made for film. It was a lot more complex, and I think with regard to our credit, Act 88, we needed something that was going to be readily accessible, that was going to be easily quantifiable, because at the rate this industry moves, they need to know in an instant what kind of cost savings they're going to be able to realize by coming here, because those decisions are made at such a late stage in the game, and they can change on a dime. More than 40 states in the U.S. Have aggressive incentive programs, and Hawaii has this distinction of competing more with other countries than we do other U.S. jurisdictions. And so the difficulty for us is that we are competing with nations. And we are, it's difficult too in that we don't have the same resources that we can bring to bear. Having said that, our credit is now the legislature. We're very grateful for an increase that we received last year that takes it to 20 and 25%. So essentially, that is 20 cents back on every dollar you spend on Oahu associated with the production, and 25% for all the neighbor islands. We want to grow this industry statewide. We also want to showcase the diversity statewide. And the important thing to remember is that you are not giving this credit out unless there is significant dollars being spent. And everything that qualifies for this credit is subject to Hawaii tax. That's what makes it a qualified expenditure. And
so in other words, it has to be that that film production paid a salary to a local Hawaii person who is paying state taxes. That would be an example.
Right, it would, but it is inclusive in it relates to all expenditures, whether they be labor, whether they be all goods and services that are subject to Hawaii tax, whatever that may be, GET, income tax, TAT. So it's in that sense, it is good for the state, and there are layers of give back that I think the state realizes from this credit. One certainly is the workforce development and educational component. For every production that qualifies for this credit, they have got to make a cash or in-kind contribution to a local public or charter school, or work with one of our unions to do internship programs. To date, we have on the magnitude of more than $800,000 in cash and in-kind contributions that have come in as a result of the credit.
Rick, you were involved with Princess Ka'ialani. Would that film have been made were it not for tax credits, or was it simply an additional benefit?
No, that film would not have been made, and that's one of the, you know, that's one of the benefits of Act 221. In 2004, we represented 3 different film studios that filmed television pilots here in Hawaii, and there was a 4th one. So there are 4 television pilots filmed in 2004, all because of Act 221. Out of those 4, 3 of them were picked up to series, which is unheard of in Hollywood. Usually it's 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 30. So that jump start that we got with all of those productions filming here at the same time. Film and TV, you can go to film school, but the real film school is when you start out as a production assistant and work your way up, and it's an on-the-job training. That's what Act 221 did, and allowed us to have a lot of productions here, and Princess Ka'ialani was one of them, that really trained a whole new segment of crew, which is another thing that you need besides the tax credit. You need people here that know how to do the job, because otherwise they're saying, well, we need to fly people in, and we need to put them in hotels, and we need to pay them per diem, we need to pay them extra salary because they're away from home. So the tax credit itself isn't enough. It's also the workforce that we have.
Having a resident workforce that can fill those positions.
That's one of the things that we were able to do with Act 221.
We have a few questions. Let's get to those. From Stephen Mililani, what is the High Tech Development Corporation and where does it fit? What does the panel think of the High Tech Development Corporation?
So the High Tech Development, HTDC essentially, is they also work within the High Growth Initiative and Hawaii Strategic Development Corporation. So they're in the Manoa Innovation Center, and we think they're great.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. So we work very closely with them at Blue as well as HVCA in terms of deploying capital for our startups, and as well as investing in a lot of the community efforts around what's going on here. So especially with MIC, and that being a hub and a place for a lot of these early stage startups to go to, where they are able to get office space, get access to resources, they're doing an incredible job in really helping to cultivate this ecosystem.
All right. From Hau'ula, Ontario, Canada has a $1 to $2 billion film industry but cannot film year-round. Singapore is an island nation that also does well in this industry. Please comment on this information, what Hawaii can do to grow this industry. Getting back to the point of Hawaii needs to compete not just with Louisiana and states that have got film, also with other countries.
Yes, and we have a lot going for us in that regard because we do have weather that allows for filming year-round on location, but it really has a lot to do. Hawaii's marketability as a location has a lot to do with our accessibility to the continent and Los Angeles specifically. The more difficult and challenging it is to get to a location, especially a location that is in another country that is not maybe as developed, its infrastructure is not as developed, or they don't have the depth of labor that we do. I mean, Hawaii is celebrating 100 years of film production in Hawaii just last year. That is a lot of years that we have had to build up our industry, and to the extent that we are well developed, that is all the more cost savings that productions realize when they come here, because that incentive that they receive is not eroded by the amount of crew and equipment and such that they would have to bring into a remote location.
Yeah, you know, it's useful to remember that 55% of all of the film and TV production in the United States is in California, and then most of that is actually in the Los Angeles area, and that we're very closely linked in with Los Angeles. There's really great air connections. Many of the people in the industry have been here before. We're also a bit of a beneficiary, I think, of better communications. The fact that now people can come out here and do Skype conferences with producers and other people in the studios in Los Angeles is a big deal nowadays. Before, it was much more difficult to monitor distant productions. Of course, on the other hand, it's also relatively easy to do that type of monitoring out of Fiji or out of Tahiti.
It's getting more easier and easier. Sumner, from an economist's point of view, is there any way to sort of gauge the amount of jobs that have been created in Hawaii because of these tax credits, tax incentives, and sort of the ancillary business that comes from it?
Yeah, you know, I mean, the report, which was prepared by the Hawaii Film Office and by DBED, I mean, I was looking at the numbers today, and you know, it basically shows that out of the entire industry, that there was a little over 5,000 jobs created. It's difficult to say how much of that came because of the credit. Much depends upon what the effectiveness of the credit is. And for example, if there'd be no film industry here if we didn't have the 20% credit, then you could say all the jobs were due to the credit. On the other hand, if, say, 2/3 of these would have already been here, then the amount of jobs created by the credit would be much less.
But you're saying these productions simply would not be happening.
Right, and you have to consider the landscape in which we are operating. We are existing in the most competitive climate ever in this industry, and that is global competition. So we, you know, these decisions are made, like I said, they're made very last minute, and they can change on a dime, as you well know. And, you know, we can have productions that are on the ground here that are fully engaged, who can pull up stakes and go someplace else because...
And we sort of spoke earlier about an example of that. There was recently an Angelina Jolie movie that was looking at very seriously at Hawaii. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Based on the novel Unbroken, and it is a passion project of hers, and I think that we lost it to Australia for a variety of reasons, but incentives had a lot to do with it. There were some visa issues, as I understand, but again, the Australian government is serious about, you know, wooing this business from the States. A good example, the British Columbia Film Commission. This whole incentives game started as a result of production going north to Vancouver. And British Columbia Film Commission is the same age as the Hawaii Film Office. 1978, they were both formed. That is now over $1 billion a year industry. And you compare the province to the state of Hawaii, but it is because the government, the provincial and the national government of Canada said this is an industry that we're going to support. It is a good clean industry that provides those well-paying jobs, that has all of the promotional value as well. So there are huge benefits for the state, and I think we're in this game for the long haul.
You know, one of the big things is what the size of the credit is. In Canada, the credits range anywhere from 20% up to 40%. They're averaging now a little over 30%. One of the things that has happened in recent years is there's been an arms race among the various states and among various countries. So somebody offers a slightly higher credit, and productions do move in response to the credit. And then other states feel that they have to respond by offering higher credits. Other countries offer higher credits. As the credits get higher and higher, the cost to the state gets higher. And at that point, there is going to come a point where the credits aren't worthwhile. When I cranked out the numbers today, what I basically found was that given the current credit, last year there was $33 million expended by the state in giving back refunds to film and TV companies. The state took in $20 million more dollars, so there was a net $13 million deficit from the credit. That's assuming that all of the jobs are actually created by the credit. If, say, half of the jobs were created by the credit just breaks even. If we start to look at the income created in the community, we look at the deficit that the state has to fund. If half the jobs are created by the credit, we end up with a $26 million deficit. That $26 million deficit, that's a reasonable amount of money. Taxes either have to be raised by $26 million or it has to be $26 million worth of spending cuts. On the other hand, household income was created too. There's a substantial amount of household income that's created by the additional film jobs. At the film and TV credit, creating half of the jobs in the industry, it just about breaks even. If it creates more, it's a positive thing for the state. We really don't know. We really don't know exactly how many extra jobs it creates, and that leaves us
on what you measure as well.
Right.
One of the things that's different about our industry, our production industry here, which is a great thing, a great selling point, but also a challenge, is by and large our crew doesn't travel. The movie we're starting now, our production manager is from Los Angeles, and he was just on a job in North Carolina. If you live in Los Angeles and you work in the film industry, you probably travel all over the country or all over the world. Very few of our crew people travel. So if there's not a production here, they're not working. And that's a cost, but we need them qualified. They're like construction workers. And the film industry is a lot like the construction industry. If you're not working construction, what do? We need construction worker here when there's projects. The other thing that none of these things ever measure, none of the reports ever measure, is the benefit that we have for shows like Hawaii Five-0 to one of our major industries here, which is the visitor industry. That people are reluctant for various reasons, or it's just too challenging to add that into the mix as to what is the value.
Because we're spending tax dollars for ads advertising Hawaii, and this is in essence a bit of an ad. Let's hop onto tech for a minute. We've talked about what other countries and states are doing to attract film productions. Where do we stand in terms of competition with other states and countries in terms of tech?
Well, I think Hawaii has, obviously unique competitive advantages. We are in Hawaii. We like to call it the developed entrepreneur, that you can surf in the morning and code at night, live a healthy lifestyle. No one's living in a cave anymore eating Funyuns and Mountain Dew. So with that in mind, those are wonderful advantages. I will say that in terms of where we stand, there are states that we'd like to compare ourselves to. We call them flyover states. So not saying that we're a flyover state because we're obviously a destination, but we aren't a coastal state. So we're not California, we're not New York. I'd say with some of those states, they've done other things to incentivize, whether that's broadband, investing in broadband, and other things like that. But I think in terms of the last 2 years, we've really increased the development of a lot of these ideas. We have great ideas here, and we're so inspired by being in Hawaii and having so many mentors here. There are so many people that have never been tapped into as resources, who have second homes here, who just love Hawaii and they want to help us.
We have brilliant tech entrepreneurs who have decided to make this their home for their family. Do you think that is going to begin to sort of percolate through the industry, the fact that those people have chosen to live here?
I think so. I think looking at what we're trying to do is cultivate this mentor network. So these people live here and they'd love to help, but no one's asked them to. And so if we can start creating that community of mentorship as well as the entrepreneurial community and really be seen as this perfect place to grow a startup because it's amazing weather and amazing resources, then we really will have a competitive edge over many, many other places.
Regardless of what we think about the tax credits, there's an awful lot of room for the state to act as a facilitator in various industries and for new startups. Film offices, I'm a big fan of the film offices. I think the film offices help to reduce transaction costs for the industry in doing filming in Hawaii. And the transaction costs can be enormous. I mean, to try to get all of these permits, to try to follow all of the regulations, to even figure out kind of what other productions are here, whether or not there's going to be space at the studio. I mean, I think the film offices are really essential.
Well, and to add to that, when you talk about what this industry means to the state, we have tripled the size of this industry since the credits began. That is the truth. But we have not supported the film offices to the degree that they need to be supported to manage this industry. As an example, we are generating on the magnitude of $300 million a year in direct expenditures in the state, and our operating and marketing budget is $50,000. And we've got a skeletal crew that is in charge of all of the film permitting and tax credit management.
It really is. When we travel to the various festivals and markets, everybody who has Puerto Rico, Bahamas.
What does Puerto Rico offer? Do you know off the top of your head?
It's in excess of 40%, but I really got to, just to jump on what Sumner said, make it very, very clear you have to pay attention to the small print, because just comparing percentages to percentages, it is what is it a percentage of? Are there limitations? A lot of the jurisdictions have spending limitations, overall spending limitations, so they have a pot of money to work with, and once it's gone, which creates kind of a feeding frenzy. And secondarily, some of them only apply to resident labor, or you have a certain credit for resident labor and limitations on, say, above the line labor or big salaried labor. So
yeah, Puerto Rico in our world, when we're talking to folks, we actually lost a $2 million movie that was scouting here and opted for Puerto Rico, although we tried to warn them against it. That Puerto Rico credit usually results in a benefit of 25 to 28%. So it's not the 40%. They all get excited about, well, Puerto Rico's 40%. We said, well, do the math. And on top of that, they have infrastructure challenges and they have crew challenges. So most people go to Puerto Rico like this is the greatest thing, and after they film there, they go, yeah, maybe we'll try somewhere else.
Yep.
This is a comment from Dave in Waikoloa. I believe the incentive has to be greater than 5% for the neighbor islands. Any thoughts in terms of going back to the ledge and trying to get a bigger differential, or is that dangerous?
We're not going to get into this race to the bottom, as people are fond of saying. We believe that the credit that we have is a good one. We feel it is at its present rate is fiscally responsible. We always fought hard for the neighbor islands to give them that extra 5% bump. Yes, they could use more. They definitely could use more, because the lion's share of production comes to Oahu by virtue of the fact that most of the infrastructure is located here, yet we have this amazing diversity across the island chain. So I would like to say, yes, we would like to get more for the neighbor islands. But in practical terms, we probably will not be able to get much more than what we have now, which we're grateful for.
Maui has gotten quite a few productions, though, hasn't it? Maui's done quite well.
In recent years, yes.
Yeah. This is a comment via Twitter. Why not put more focus on growing technology from the ground up, starting with empowering our youth, which it's just sort of a question of mine. What would you like to see in terms of what kind of education and skills are being given here locally, so it can be local people coming into the opportunities that we talked about earlier?
That's a really interesting topic. We just had a luncheon today at HVCA all around attracting talent in Hawaii. And actually a couple of our speakers, one is an instructor at Iolani teaching app design and development. Another, Russell Chang with Dev League, teaching whether they're adults or students. They've got an evening course as well as an 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. kind of a course where you give up everything to learn. teaching and developing that talent here in Hawaii. And I think it's so interesting when we start to educate these kids when they're young. I always say it changes your world when you take these classes and you learn about entrepreneurship, where you become a problem solver. You're suddenly looking at the world and you can see something that's not right, and you start looking at how can I solve this problem. And it's really, really empowering. And I think if we can continue to grow that here in Hawaii, we're going to see a lot of these kids, coming back. I'm not trying to say people shouldn't leave. I think it's great to leave, but they should come back.
Sumner, any thoughts in terms of real skills that we need to make sure are happening for the new workforce coming?
Well, I think so. I mean, Hawaii, I think, has lagged behind a bit in educating its population at the higher education level. The percentage of students going to college has stayed relatively flat over the last couple decades. It's really clear to me that people need more of a college education. There's no way to be involved in high-tech areas in the film industry or in any other industry if you don't have enough of an education. I think the University of Hawaii is currently moving to try to meet that challenge, to try to get more of Hawaii's high school students into the educational system here.
I would agree
It's really important. It's really important to be expanding higher education. UH West Oahu may help contribute to that, but I think in general, just infrastructure investment is really important for a lot of these industries. If you have a state that doesn't have proper roads, you have a state that doesn't have a good a fast internet. That's a big problem here. I think we've lagged behind in that. It's something that the state is finally starting to address. But it's hard for firms to come here and say, "Gee, look at the backward broadband that's basically here," and then say, "Gee, this is going to be a great place to locate for high tech." I mean, there are basic issues that cut across all industries. It's hard to engage in a film production if it's difficult to get from Mokuleia into the center of town.
So I actually want to comment. I think there obviously, higher education, I'm a full believer in that, but I do think that there is space for more specific vocational
And what would those
education
specifics be?
around high development. So whether it's technology, engineer, you take a look at no longer, are you going to school, you get your 4-year degree in liberal arts and you come out and you're, manager at the Gap. I'm not trying to say there's anything wrong with that, but I'm saying that I think it's interesting now where there's a lot of these programs in Silicon Valley all over the country, as well as now in Hawaii with DevLeague and others like that, these kids are going in specifically to learn how to be a developer, how to basically export app software, etc. So being relevant in the workforce.
Because those opportunities are coming.
Yeah.
For those of you just joining us tonight on Insights, we're asking our guests, do high-tech film and tax credits really benefit Hawaii? We encourage you to join the conversation by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments. Donnie, I was interested, and Rick, listening to that. I know that you must hear wonderful things from the film crews about the people, the food, I hope, the weather, everything else. What are the things that film crews go, gosh, it would be great if Hawaii could polish? What's our feedback in terms of roads or internet? Are there things we could do outside of credits?
We need more infrastructure. We need more studio space, and I think we're all keenly aware of that. The state is engaged in a process right now to do a feasibility study and business analysis to figure out where the next studio might be best suited somewhere within the state, not just on Oahu necessarily, but we're going to look at the entire state and see what makes the most sense. So we do need infrastructure space. That's something that they're talking about. Traffic is an issue. You're correct on that, and the place for us to have a new studio facility may not necessarily be within the urban core of Honolulu, and will probably most likely not be within the urban core of Honolulu. But then traffic is going to come into play because
getting out to that.
Yeah, time is money. And when we went through the master planning process 20 years ago for the studio facility at Diamond Head, it was its proximity to Waikiki and the variety of accommodation that can be provided to productions at all different price points that made the most sense. But again, you have to look at the whole package of where it's going to be situated and what those surrounding areas are going to look like.
Rick, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we lose we've attracted some great productions and large productions to Hawaii, but without the stage space, they need to go elsewhere for the stages. So Louisiana is a big, destination for filming on stages. And what that does, so we could say, well, we've got part of it and they've got part of it. The problem is it still makes us more expensive, because if you're budgeting a show and say, I'm going to go to Hawaii, but then I have to pack everybody up and ship them to another location to film my stage work, that's a transactional cost. Whereas if they could come here and say, we're going to film Hawaii, we're going to film on the stage, then we're going to go film outside again. Now they have to shoot everything outside and make sure they've got it all, and then run back to the stages somewhere else. So it's, without having the stages, we're not keeping that work, and for the productions, we're also making it more expensive for them, even if they choose to come here and film part of it.
What does an up-to-the-date studio cost? I mean, what sort of cost is it to build a second studio?
We've had a project that we've been trying to develop in Kapolei for many, many years, and the cost of that studio is $50 million.
So a big investment for the state, and one to think about.
It would be great too if the state has had real problems in keeping up its facilities. I mean, and in some ways, if the state is going to own the sound stages, it really needs to make a commitment to make sure that they're
not going to be.
that they're-
We're not going to be the ones. This is going to be a private
Right.
sector development. This is not going to be a state owned and operated studio like Diamond Head.
But this is the type of thing where the state has a role in facilitating this. It's an essential facility for the industry. And you certainly don't want to end up with, say, one firm owning it and extracting monopoly rents from the other firms in the industry, and essentially restraining the growth of the industry. But it's also, even if the state has some role in this, it is really important that there be some type of state-private partnership involved in this,
or at least the commitment to maintain the incentives.
Yes.
I mean, the last thing we want to do is try and raise $50 million to build a real estate project with transient tenants who we can't tell when they're going to come, but we hope they come, and then for some reason have the state say, well, we've decided that we're not going to do the incentive anymore, and then we're like, well, that's...
Yeah, stability and predictability are the most important things with regard to our industry and this credit. And there have been other jurisdictions that have pulled the rug out from under productions that have actually been out engaged in production, and it is a big black eye that you will take a long time to recover from.
No one's going to want to come back.
I would strongly echo that too, that stability and predictability is really important. I think one of the best things that the legislature did was to extend the film and TV tax credit to 2018, I think was when it was extended
2018.
Through 2018. And that's important because that enables producers to plan.
Yep.
They can look ahead and start planning productions in 2016, 2017, 2018. And that type of long-range planning is typical in the industry.
The second studio would not be state funded?
Well, there would probably be a public-private partnership, and I can't say specifically, but maybe the state will be involved with providing the land. I'm not really sure what that looks like at this point, but we have nearly $20 million invested at the Diamond Head facility, and it is the only state-owned and operated facility of its kind in the country, and we need to focus on taking care of that and helping to pave the way for the private sector to get another larger facility going.
Melly, Richard via Twitter says, are we doing enough to promote the industries in Hawaii public schools? When you compare sort of what you've seen here with your experience living in California, I would imagine we might be quite far behind just because Silicon Valley and California has got sort of such a leg up in terms of that sort of education and widespread knowledge. How far behind would you say we are in terms of the education we're giving in your industry?
I can't really speak to the education in the elementary schools and high schools as much. I will say I have seen more in the private school sector. Iolani just built the Sullivan Center, which is an amazing facility where Blue Startups and Energy Accelerator are actually doing our demo day on June 13th. So these are the graduates of our accelerator. So they'll be pitching to investors for follow-on funding. I think there are other initiatives out there like Lemonade Alley, where a lot of these kids are getting that exposure to building businesses, whether they're building a lemonade stand and marketing it.
Can you tell me a little bit about? I don't know about Lemonade Alley.
Yeah, so Lemonade Alley is it's a competition where the kids basically create a recipe around lemonade and they have to market it. And it's there's a big event where everyone tries the lemonade and they're marketing it, and there's an actual winner. So it is kind of an exercise in entrepreneurship. And these are really great examples of these kids getting exposure to starting to learn about problem solving and marketing and business, which is interesting.
And this is in Hawaii as well?
This is in Hawaii, yes.
Okay, terrific. Here's a question from Matt on Molokai. Why aren't film production tax credits designed to benefit, encourage smaller local productions and producers? Why do they only benefit mainly out-of-state, large-scale productions? Small local productions seem to be an area where we can best develop our local industry and talent.
I know exactly who that came from. Old Matt Yamashita from Molokai.
You gotta love that.
And we are big supporters of his, and he's tremendously talented. When we designed this credit, we did bring the spending threshold down significantly. The original credit that Hawaii had that was passed in the late 90s was quite hefty. You had to spend on the magnitude of $1 million, I think, to qualify for the credit. We brought it down to $200,000, and that was in an effort to try to attract more of the commercial business, national commercials, and also to try to help our local independent filmmakers with that kind of a spending threshold. But it's still a tad high for them. What they really need is they need funding for their projects. And we care a lot about what happens to our local filmmakers, because they're kind of out there doing it for the rest of us in terms of telling those stories, and it's difficult to make a film. You know?
And one of the things that Act 221 did, since it was an investment tax credit, did allow smaller productions to raise money to make a film. We had a small film that was a $800,000 film that would not have been made. The threshold got lowered, which is on the current credit, which is great, but still, if you're only getting 20 to 25% of your budget, as a small filmmaker, that you still have a long way to go to raise equity. And what most people don't realize, and I didn't realize it till I read it a couple of years ago, was that there are over 4,000 independent films made in the US. And how many of those have you heard of, let alone watched? That's all money that people spent to make movies, so there's a lot of money that needs to be raised to make these films, and it's not just the films you see in the theaters or that you see on iTunes. There's a lot of other stuff, and that is our training ground. So we do need to try and figure out how to either come up with a different incentive or come up with a funding mechanism to have lower budget productions be able to tell their stories, because that is where we're going to train a lot of people.
I want to see a film fund established for our Indigenous film community. That's what I want to see, and it is critically important, because as Rick says, the credit is not going to be enough for them.
Because, of course, that's the pull between sort of artistic and cultural needs and economic sense, right? The state is trying to accomplish something economically. Here's a comment. It feels like the film industry is a one-off kind of industry where tech companies could be more long-term. Should we be focusing more on tech than film? I'd love to get everyone's opinion on that. Melly, let's start with you.
I think it's just in terms of when you're doing these tax credit, these incentives, ultimately what they're trying to do is contribute to the tax base. So you look at, I'm not going to say film, I'll say tourism. Tourism is not a growth industry. I think in terms of investment, you need to be investing in businesses who can export knowledge. And those are tech businesses. So whether it's exporting apps, software, etc., we're exporting to these markets outside of Hawaii. So bringing money into the state, and that's really like the only way to contribute to our tax base. We can't keep building more hotels. I think it's interesting with the film industry, where you're able to kind of tout all these expenditures, which we can't do yet because we're, it's investing in this growth industry. So we put this money in. 8 to 10 years later, we're hoping that we're going to be building all these jobs, that, all this money is going to be pouring in. If we had Facebook and Twitter headquartered here in Hawaii, it'd be a much different story, right? So part of this is also like having a big win. We really do need a big win that's really going to showcase what we're talking about here when we're talking about growth industries.
Is there anything that you're excited about that's soon on the horizon, or are we still a few years out on that?
That would be a tough thing for me to answer.
But we'll hope.
But yes, I think we're very close. We're very close.
All right, Sumner, your thoughts on that?
But there's always this tension between improving the general business climate, and the general business climate goes back to the state of human capital, people's education, people's experience in various industries. It also goes back to things like infrastructure, goes back to the overall level of taxation in the state. It might even go back to the cost of housing. I mean, that's become a big deterrent to recruitment in various industries in Hawaii and to firms relocating here. So all of these things, if we really make the state a better place to do business, we're very likely to attract a lot more high-tech firms. It's worth noting too that we have been diversifying. If you go back and you look at tourism expenditures in 1990, they have been, with the exception of various booms and busts in tourism, they have been declining ever since. If you deflate the tourism expenditures, the state has been diversifying. Now, unfortunately, if you look at it, we've been diversifying more into the military. The military has been growing, tourism has been falling. Some of the high-tech firms that have come about are military support firms. They're firms that are there to support various activities in the military. Others, though, clearly go back to some of Hawaii's natural attributes. There's a lot of firms out there supporting the telescopes on the Big Island. That is a type of clean tech that's been really important, and doing some type of intelligent development that protects the environment, that also protects the cultural ethos of Native Hawaiians on the Big Island, and yet allows some of these complementary firms also to grow. That's really important. I think one of the most critical things is less providing big tax credits. There's times where relatively modest small tax credits can really be useful, but even more to the point, though, is the state really asking some of these industries, what do you need? Is the road system good enough? Do we need some special education programs, whether at the community college level in the high schools or even at lower levels? The proposals in the state, too, for early education are really important. If you don't have an educated workforce, I really think a lot of these proposals are just going to be bringing out-of-state workers into Hawaii. It is absolutely critical to be training people for these future industries.
I think one of the question, one of the perspectives is the one-offs. We tend, if you're not in the film industry, to view the film industry, oh, there's the big new movie from Sony, or there's the big new movie from DreamWorks, and they come here and it's one-off. But again, what we do in Hawaii is manufacture. So I don't think anybody would say, gosh, the construction industry is really weird. It's just kind of a bunch of one-off buildings. That's really not an industry. We all support the construction industry, and we recognize its needs and that it is an industry unto itself because it's building things. That's what the film industry is. It's a construction industry, and they're all trained and union professionals here building things that we then export. So it's not a one-off industry because any more than construction's a one-off industry.
Well, it's also that you have a competitive advantage just with our natural. I mean, Hawaii is Hawaii, which is why so many films are here. So it's not just construction.
Right. So whether it's an app that we're exporting that everybody uses, or it's a movie that we're exporting that everybody sees, we're building it here, and we're building it with professionals.
It's also one successful experience leads to the next and the next, and it's all about being able to service this industry in an efficient manner so that the word will get across to the next producer and the next and the next, and those projects will keep coming. And our local filmmakers are all engaged in this industry, and it is the perfect marriage between those who are trying to, put food on their table and fund their next project, working for a big production and getting invaluable experience doing so.
Yeah, I agree with what Donnie's saying. I think especially in the film industry as well as the tech, you get to this level of quality, and it just keeps building. So with the increase in great talent, great ideas, venture capital coming in, and it just keeps growing. I totally agree with you.
And I was in New York just a few weeks ago, and a massive billboard for Godzilla, huge. And that just opened a few days ago, and it is a really great film. And Hawaii has a huge role in that film. And what that does, that then becomes our calling card. Just as Lost became our calling card and Hawaii 5.0, and it tells the world and it tells the rest of the industry what we are capable of. And that begets the next production.
And everybody who works here in Hawaii, I tell the joke that when we have crew people or producers from the mainland, you can always tell who they are, because as soon as we're ready to wrap production, you see them coming across the set, and they come up and they have this look on their face, and now I can recognize it, and they're like, do you have another project? You know, because I really want to stay here and work, and I'm supposed to go to, you know, Michigan or Eastern Europe or Canada in the winter or whatever, and they're, you know, they really want to stay here, and because it is such a great place.
We're coming to our final minutes, so I do want to get to as many of these questions as I can. From Casey in Ka'ava, for tax credits, shouldn't Hollywood films be required to donate to our public schools? Hollywood films regularly are in Kahuku country, but Kahuku High and Intermediate struggles with limited digital media equipment and dedicated part-time and volunteer film teachers. Jurassic Park 4 just filmed at Kula Ranch and Turtle Bay. Kahana Valley, Chinaman's Hat are all big film locations. Any thoughts on that?
They do. All the tax credit requirement to contribute to educational programs in the film and video realm only apply to public and charter schools, and it is extremely important. So schools like Kahuku are benefiting from the credit, and it is our way of showing that these productions want to give back to the community, and they want to help build this workforce. So we're seeing a really remarkable advancement in our high schools alone in what they've been able to do with film and video. And I consider us to be partners with, you know, the high-tech industry, because that's really where this is all going. And we just took a visit out to Waianae High School, one of the most economically stressed communities, and to see what Sea Riders Productions is doing at Waianae High School is nothing short of phenomenal. So, yeah.
Okay, we're in our final minutes. I'm going to give you two tech questions at once. Anyone jump in who wants to. What are some of the unique tech companies that have come out of Hawaii? From Dan in Honolulu, can Hawaii tech companies match the salaries of their counterparts on the mainland? From Mike and Kamiki, any thoughts?
So in terms of any unique technologies coming out, I'll just kind of go to some of our Blue Startups companies. In our first cohort, we had a company called Volta, which was electronic vehicle charging stations. If you're ever at Whole Foods,
sure,
and there's those first spots there, it's an advertising-based model. So essentially, you get a free top-off on your electronic vehicle, and it's through advertising that they're able to pay for that. And they're doing really well. They're actually in San Francisco now. They have an office still here in Hawaii, but also in San Francisco, and have raised, I think, over $2 million in follow-on funding. So that's kind of one of the things that we look at as success here with the accelerators, is the ability to raise follow-on funding. Another interesting company was Flow Water, which is kind of like commercialized Brita stations. So if you think of it, while we kind of leave the house now, we look at taking our canvas bag to go to the grocery store. People can now take their bottle,
and there will be refill stations.
And there's refill stations.
I love that.
And as far as matching salaries, you know, if we don't match salaries, we lose good people. But that said, there is always some type of discount for living in a good place. Either you pay higher housing prices, or you have slightly lower salaries, and in Hawaii we end up with both. Okay, but that's to be expected. If we actually had competitive housing prices and we had the same salaries as the mainland, we'd have 8 million people wanting to live here.
Yeah.
You know, there's always going to be some type of salary discount to live in Hawaii.
So let me ask you, Sumner, you started by saying that 221, in your opinion, was really a bit of a disaster. Right. So getting back to our original question of the show, are these tax credits good for Hawaii and our economy? Do you feel that the current programs that we've just spent this hour discussing are good for Hawaii? Do you feel like we've found a good spot in these industries and the tax credits that the state provides?
I think that as long as the tax credits are modest, they're done predictably, we don't tinker with them all the time, And we're constantly asking ourselves, what's the effect of these tax credits? Are they really benefiting the community? We should always be looking at them as an experiment. We should be trying to evaluate them over time. But that doesn't mean the evaluation comes every year. Every 5 years, it might be nice to look, say, at the film credit or look at other credits we have. There are some really great credits, such as the R&D credit. A relatively modest film credit I'm in favor of, partly because of its effects on tourism.
And is that what you would term what we have
effects
right
on
now?
workforce development. I think it's hard to say, only because we haven't really studied it carefully. I would really compliment the Hawaii State Legislature for deciding to allow more information to be available to researchers. That was one of the big problems with Act 221, was the Berlin Wall of information. Basically, the firms reported to the state and nobody else knew anything about the program. It was only late in the program that the names of the firms receiving the credits were actually released. All that we had were aggregate totals. It was virtually impossible to study. And basically, people out there receiving the credits just said, take us on our word that this program is working. That's a ridiculous way for any state program to operate. All
this
state
is a very
programs should be
transparent
subject to
credit,
study.
and it is, you know, I will say this is a very modest credit. It is fiscally responsible. So I'm obviously going to be a big advocate.
And it's one that you need to basically defend on an almost yearly basis with the legislature,
yes,
right? That window
yes.
continues to
But
open.
again, we need to try to protect it at all cost because of the whole predictability, stability factor. We cannot, word travels quickly, and we can't have
that instability.
Yeah.
Thank you all. I learned so much this hour. Thank you very much. Next time on Insights, women have broken many barriers in Hawaii's workplace. There are CEOs and senators, as well as police officers and firefighters. But despite demonstrating their ability to function as well as men in many fields, men often get paid more for the same work, and outdated stereotypes about women sometimes leave them relegated to lesser skilled jobs. On the next Insights on PBS Hawaii, what struggles still remain for women in the workplace? That's next time on Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Malia Mattoch. A hui hou.